Graham?
Harley?
Yes, so welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We're joined by representatives of Lidl, who are going to start off the evening with a short presentation, I presume on their proposals, and then we'll go through the questions that have been asked. So without any ado, shall I turn over to Lidl? Who's going to lead the Lidl presentation?
My name is Kevin Davis. I'm going to sort of chair our side of it to try and make it as efficient as possible so I can pass the answers around the team that we've got in front of us. Just so everybody's aware, we've got Martin and Richard, who are from our planning consultants. We've got two representatives here, which is Stefan and Grant from Lidl. We've also got our transport and drainage consultant here, Toan, and also the architect, Andy, is here as well. So when it comes to the questions, I'll be chairing it and pushing them around each of the teams so they can give you the answers that everybody's asked for. But for now, I'm going to quickly hand over to Martin and Richard so they can take us through the updated proposals after we've submitted.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I'll just share my screen, so just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second, just trying to find the... Sorry, I'm trying to find the present. Oh, here we go. Okay. Can you all see the screen?
Yep, certainly can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. This presentation will be short and sweet. We'll just go through the proposals, how it's changed since the public consultation event in November. Just in terms of the background, obviously, I think we just wanted to emphasize the point that the site already includes non-residential uses. The public house that's obviously been vacant since December 2023, and the hotel that is still actively trading. I think there are quite a few comments were raised about the residential area, so we just wanted to obviously make that point that the site's already been subject to kind of non-residential use and therefore everything associated with it. In terms of the application itself, so the site has been on the market first of all since the 10th of April 2024. So the pub site has been
Martin, sorry to interrupt, but I don't think the presentation is advancing.
All right.
On the first page. That's better. Thank you.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just leave it at this view, let's say. So as I said, the site has been marketed since the 10th of April. The application itself was validated on the 4th of February 2025. The statutory consultation deadline is ending this week on the 20th of March. The target determination is 6th of May. As it stands, we're anticipating that the planning application will be determined by the planning committee. Given the target determination of the 6th of May, it's likely to be in June or July, but this is still to be confirmed. With regards to the site layout and at the public consultation, the main I don't know if you can. I would make it larger. Don't know if anyone can see the detail. The store itself is 1,800 square meters. There were 71 parking spaces that included 47 standard, and there was 4 accessible parent and child and EV electric vehicle charging spaces, both active and passive. We're providing 36 bicycle spaces. As part of the proposal, we were obviously wanted to retain the Spitfire replica, and we were proposing to retain as much vegetation and trees as possible, which is still the case. In terms of the new or revised planning application proposals, the store remains around the same size. The car park has increased by one parking space to 72, but we've included 3 enlarged bays. And the cycle provision is still the same. Following the consultation comments, the public consultation event, we've relocated or moved the access further away from Church Avenue. So we moved it slightly to the south from the original position. In terms of the replica, we're incorporating the Spitfire replica within the memorial garden, as we call it, that includes benches and heritage information boards about the site's previous use. In terms of the landscaping, we've incorporated additional tree coverage within the car parking area, and we're also retaining and enhancing the boundary vegetation, particularly on Ickenham Road. And now the proposal also includes roof-mounted solar panels. This is just a comparison between the original proposal and the planning application. So, like I said, we can see a bit more trees, a bit more vegetation here, and more hedgerow planting on the main road. With regards to the design, we've obviously listened to the feedback we had from the council from the pre-application submission, as well as from the public consultation event that took place. So the elevation now has been revised to show more aesthetically pleasing, we would say, proposal that adheres to the local character of the conservation area, and also still retains Lidl retail kind of branding. So this elevation shows how the store would look from the car park. This slide shows the elevations from Ickenham Road. So that would be the main elevation facing the road. Obviously, there's a glazed elevation and more of a sensitive design to the building. But we'll touch on that later on when we go through the questions. This is a comparison between the existing building in terms of how it's the scale and massing. So will remain kind of the same in terms of massing. And these are the visuals from on the left-hand side. That was the CGI that was obviously shared during the public consultation. And on the right-hand side, we have the revised artist's impression of how the design of the store looks at the moment. This visual shows the store from the east, so you can see the difference in the design of the proposal. Thank you very much. We'll obviously go through the questions that you've posed, but if there's anything in the meantime, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. So can I hand over to Daniel to ask the questions that we have gathered to start with?
You can see my screen, I hope.
Definitely.
Okay, good. So we asked we received lots of questions from the residents, and we've grouped them into 10 topics. So the first question is on the location. So if I read the question, and then I'll stop sharing my screen and Lidl's people can answer. So the orchard site is neither part of an out-of-town commercial area nor near the central transport hub of Ruislip. It's within a residential area and seems smaller than other nearby stores, with no flexibility for expansion in the future. So we have 2 questions. What was Lidl's criteria in selecting this site? And please, if you could, provide a comparison of the size of the proposed store and the number of parking spaces against the stores in Pinner, South Ruislip and Uxbridge?
Thanks, Daniel. I'm going to ask Stefan from Lidl and Richard, one of our planning consultants, to answer the first question. I think Stefan then can give you some ideas about the actual other stores around the area and numbers of parking, etc. at the same time. So, Stefan and Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Good evening, everybody. My name is Stefan Davis, Senior Acquisition Manager for Lidl, and I'm responsible for acquisitions in the North West London region. Ruislip was chosen as an opportunity after consultation through various different requirements that we have, over 70 in our region. Specifically, Ruislip was chosen because it's got a certain catchment of 20,000 people who live in the local area, and there is an obvious lack of store in Ruislip town centre. Now, this store benefits from great parameters, close proximity to Ruislip town centre, but also more importantly, it allows us to build our standard footprint, which is something that we are very keen to do. It's in close proximity to our South Ruislip store, which is of similar sizing, so it's less car parking, but similar size footprint store, which allows us to provide our full range. From a planning perspective, I think I'll let Richard touch upon, but I think it's close proximity to town centre, close proximity to the residents is something that's a real draw for this particular site.
So, yeah, Richard Hewson, planning consultant for Lidl. So in terms of the location, obviously this is a previously employment site, which is still operational. In planning terms, there are criteria that you have to look at in terms of site selection. So obviously from planning perspective, you always need to look at town centre sites first, then you go to edge of centre, and then you go to outer centre. And as part of our proposal, we have to do a sequential impact assessment to seek whether there are sites available in close proximity to that hierarchy. So obviously first we'd always look at town centre sites, then we look at edge of centre, which is 300 metres away from the town centre, and then edge of sites. And through our site selection process, there are no sites at the present time that can fit the criteria for a food store of this size. So therefore, from a planning perspective, this is a site that is available, plus obviously the existing uses that have been on the site. It does pose it as the most appropriate site at the present time to come forward.
And Stefan, did you want to just comment on the parking about the other stores?
I think Grant, were you going to touch upon that, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I can touch upon it. Let me just share my screen. Give us a second. So hi everyone, Grant Shulton. I had property at Lidl. Good, thank you all for joining, and good to see some familiar faces from the public consultation we did a couple of months back. So can you see my screen with the PowerPoint slide?
Yep.
We can, yeah.
So the proposed store details are at the bottom. So the GIA of this store is 1,825 square meters, and we have 72 car parking spaces in total. You'll see it's actually the car parking, like Stefan touched upon, is lower than the other sites, but actually in London, anything above 50 for us is pretty good, and we have the data to suggest that there's ample car parking spaces once you have over 50 of those spaces. In terms of size, I think some of the comments were that the site's not big enough for us, but actually, as you can see from the other comparables within Hillingdon and I guess around the Ruislip area, it sits quite neatly in the middle. It's about an average, so we're quite happy with the size store. It's standard spec, like Stefan said, and I think the initial question included a comment in regards to an extension, which we wouldn't be looking to do in this instance, because we get the standard store size that we want.
Okay, thank you. So we go to number 2.
Yep.
So our second question is on heritage. So the cultural and heritage assessment in your application states The proposals do indicate the desire to retain the monument, moving it to a memorial garden in the south of the site. However, much of the significance of the memorial is derived from its location next to the orchard, a public house frequented by members of the 303 Squadron during the Second World War. As such, the significance of the memorial is enhanced by the presence of the orchard, and its demolition would mean much of the context surrounding the statue and its location would be lost. So our two-parted question: how do you justify demolishing a historical building and relocating the locally listed Spitfire Memorial to a small garden by the side of a public pavement and busy road? And the second part, do you intend to keep the same memorial Spitfire and stone, because the renderings in the plans do not show the stone and do not show the original model Spitfire?
Thanks. I'm going to cover this one. So obviously it's important to remember that this isn't the building itself is not a listed building. So let's deal with the building and then the memorial. The building itself is not a listed building, and I think it's therefore fair to say that any future use of this site would mean that anybody could come along, whether it's residential or any other use, and actually remove the building completely. And in conversation with our heritage consultant, it's very clear that there is a particular issue around the memorial, which is something we do need to do something about. The existing memorial, as I think we may have said before at the consultation, has actually been removed by the Polish Airmen's Association and not by us. It's been taken away for repair. We are in dialogue with them about what the future of it is, and at this stage they themselves are not able to commit to returning it to this site. So although it is included in our planning application, we do not know at this stage whether what would be there would be the original model aircraft or whether that would go off somewhere else. One such site potentially is apparently the Polish War Memorial. So we are in dialogue with them, but it is our intention that there is definitely a memorial on this site. That's why we've marked it in the way we have. It's not yet defined exactly what that looks like. We've shown it with a model and we've shown it with some benches and a garden. And we would also look to relocate some of the information that's already provided on that site. And until we get through planning, we'll be talking, and whilst we go through planning, we'll be talking to the council about how we can ensure that we get something there that is keeping as many people happy as possible, because obviously of its importance. So in summary, we are on it, we're trying to get something done, and we are talking to the council during the planning process about how we might deliver that once this has been approved.
Okay, thank you. So if we go to number 3. On the conservation area and design of the building. So the site is within the Ruislip Village Conservation Area, where developments are expected to preserve or enhance the character or appearance of the area, exploit opportunities to restore any lost features, and resist the loss of buildings. The street scene is predominantly residential, characterized with mature garden hedges and trees that give the area a green and sylvan appearance. So 2 questions again. How will the proposed building design and landscaping plans align with the character of the surrounding houses and gardens and make a positive contribution to the character and appearance of the conservation area? And why hasn't Lidl considered retaining the exterior of the existing building?
Thanks very much, Daniel. I'm going to ask Andy, who's our architect, to answer these questions for you.
Thanks, Kevin. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Acortt, architect for the scheme. So we prepared the initial scheme that went forward to public consultation, which was a development of the Lidl standard building type store. And following the feedback from that consultation, we've looked at the massing and fenestration of the building in terms of the local conservation area. So we've looked at materials, built form, roofscapes. So materials, there's a large degree of rendered buildings with steeply sloped clay pantile roofs, which we've replicated across the building, trying to introduce height, size, different forms to the mass of the larger building to try and break it down and respond in a more in keeping form with the local vernacular. And I think we've done that and kept in terms with the Lidl standard requirements of keeping a high street presence and signage. In terms of the existing building, we obviously looked at the siting and the size and shape, and it was neither in an efficient location or of a usable form for the use that we need. That was the reason why we've looked to demolish the building and build a completely new building in its place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go to the fourth question, which I'm afraid is a long one, about transport modes. So the site is not near the main transport hub at Ruislip station, where all of the bus routes stop. 3 local buses serve Ickenham Road, the U1, not the U2, the 278 and the E7. Many parts of Ruislip would not be on a direct bus route. The corner of the site at the junction of Sharps Lane and Ickenham Road is proposed to be reopened for a pedestrian entrance, but this entry point was closed by the Beefeater restaurant many years ago as it was so dangerous. So we have 3 questions. What proportion of customers are assumed to arrive by car, public transport, bike, or walking? How do you intend to make the access of the site safe for pedestrians and cyclists? And finally, how do you intend to provide a safe crossing to the bus stop on the other side of the road where the pavement is very narrow and has no space for a bus stand?
Thanks very much, Daniel. I'm going to ask Towan, who's our transport advisor to consultant, to come in and give us an answer about this particular issue, and others might dive in as well if they've got something they want to add.
Hi everyone, my name's Tone Chow. I've been working with Lidl for the last 10 years and I've worked on over 120 stores throughout the country. Just to answer the question, the first thing is I think there's a discrepancy on the bus. So this was a typo. So basically, yes, it should have been U1 rather than U2. But we'll rectify that as part of the consultation response that we send to the council. I think the first question was what proportion of customers will be arriving by non-car modes like, public transport, bike and walk. So as part of the transport assessment, we scope this out with the Highway Authority. And what we use is a database called TRIX, which generates various trip rates for walk, cycle, car trips. And in terms of non-car use, non-car trips, and this equates to about 15% of the total trips that come into the site. I think that answers the first question. The second question is, how do you intend to make the access to the site safe for pedestrians and cycles? So what we've designed out is dedicated pedestrian and cycle routes from Ickenham Road into the site, and we're providing cycle parking for up to 36 cycle. So the next question was, how do you intend to provide a safe crossing to the bus stop on the other side of the road where the pavement is narrow and has no space for bus stops? I mean, what we have looked at is, the accident records and there's been quite low number of accidents along Ickenham Road involving pedestrians and cyclists. However, we are working with the council to see what improvements we can make. But we haven't had the consultation response from the Highway Authority yet, so that's still in progress.
Thank you very much. So on to question 5. We have 10 in total. Transport survey. The transport assessment in your application indicates that turning counts were conducted on Friday the 17th and Saturday the 18th of May last year at the stated junctions. So 3 questions. What was the criteria for choosing those dates, and how were the times of day chosen for the study? Were the length of the traffic queues in Church Avenue, Ickenham Road, King's End, and Wood Lane towards the White Bear roundabout included in the analysis, as well as the queue lengths along Long Lane from the A40 towards Ickenham? And have peak traffic flows on different times of day and on different days of the week been investigated to fully understand when peak congestion tends to take place, and if so, for how long, in order to consider how to avoid deliveries taking place at those critical times?
Yes, in terms of the transport assessment that we prepared, we've scoped that out with the Highway Authority. So in terms of the period that's assessed, which is the Friday and the Saturday, we've carried out surveys for the morning, evening, and Saturday peaks. On a Friday, we did surveys from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Sorry, and in the afternoon or evening, it's 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. On a Saturday, it's 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So we covered quite a wide period of a typical sort of weekday and Saturday. So in terms of like, were queue surveys carried out? Yes, they were carried out as well. So we've assessed the queues that were generated, or well, the existing queues anyway. And as part of the transport assessment, we prepared transport models to assess the impact of the proposed development post sort of completion, and that's currently being assessed by the Highway Authority.
Sorry, can I just interrupt here for a quick second? Can we just clarify who you mean by the Highway Authority, because we have two.
Yeah, so basically
we have London Borough of Hillingdon and we have Transport for London. But I don't think Transport for London is the authority on this section of road because it's not an A road. So I think it might be Hillingdon.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so basically it's Hillingdon that we've been liaising with. Transport for London will have a say, but we again, that we haven't seen their consultation response yet.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the sixth question on your lorries deliveries. So most supermarkets have different entrances for deliveries and customers, but only one vehicle access is proposed at this site. So our three questions: how will customers be kept safe in the car park if up to 4 6.5 meter articulated lorries will arrive every day and go through the car park? At what times of day will the delivery vehicles arrive? And can Lidl ensure that arrival times will not be at peak traffic flow times or unsociable hours to minimise the impact on the already busy road network and to avoid disruption both to neighbouring residents and to traffic in the road backed up towards the roundabout?
Yeah. In regards to the customers being safe, kept safe from the Arctics, I mean, there's only one or two service vehicles that arrive and depart the site. They don't take away, basically it's an all-in-one process. So basically they deliver the goods and they take all the waste in one go. So like I said, there's only one or two per day, movements per day for that. The majority of stores, Lidl stores anyway, do actually have a single shared access for customers and service vehicles, and this is about sort of like 700-800 stores across the UK, and there hasn't been any reported accidents that has occurred in Lidl stores between service vehicles and customers. In terms of like what time of the day, this will be dictated by the council in terms of a condition. Lidl tend to avoid peak hour servicing during the peak congested period, but these are usually confirmed by the Lidl servicing team once planning is gained. and consideration will be sought, on any comments from the council in terms of any restrictions or conditions on noise and congestion.
Just to add in to what's just been said, I think the questions probably come from in our delivery and servicing plan. We say up to 4 deliveries. Toan's right. That typically it's 2.
Yeah, it's typically 1 or 2, but we have said 4 just sometimes just to cover the Christmas peak periods where there could be 4. We're not saying that there will be 4, but there could be. But that's just to run up for Christmas.
So on to the 7th question. Traffic and congestion. First, on changes to the road layout, what plan changes are you proposing to the road layout? And for the avoidance of further congestion, 2 questions. What measures have been considered to avoid increased congestion? And won't the new bus stop location nearer to the White Bear roundabout cause more vehicles to back up towards the roundabout, causing more general congestion and safety issues for pedestrians?
In terms of the road layout, what we have now is an existing public house and hotel with access adjacent to the Church Avenue junction. What we've done is basically improve that by increase the junction space in there. So we move the access junction further south. This provides a dedicated right turn lane into the store. So that this will sort of minimize the conflict between the 2 junctions that are there. I think in terms of measures that's been considered to avoid increased congestion, I mean, there's always a perception when there's a new food store that there'll be an increase in vehicle trips to the site. But I mean, the data that we have is a lot of these trips are already on the network. So a lot of the trips that go to the store are pass by trips or diverted trips from other stores or other travels to other stores. I mean, like I said, I've done transport assessments for over 120 stores, and we've discussed this with the Highway Authority, and what we've found is that when there is a store that's more local to the site, there's actually a reduction in congestion because there's less trips traveling further afield. So basically, what if you were going to a store that's 2 or 3 miles away, you've got an option now to actually either walk to this store or travel less distance. So like I said, there is a reduction in vehicle mileage as a result of a new store which is more local. As part of the sort of transport assessment, we've also prepared a travel plan to try and encourage staff and customers to reduce their car-borne trips to the site. So we're looking at improving, like I said, providing for cycle parking facilities, dedicated access, pedestrian access into the store, and along with discussions with council, we'll consider other initiatives to improve access to the store by non-car modes. I think the last question was about the bus stop location. So as a result of the access, where we moved the access south slightly, the bus stop will only be moved by about 5 meters. So this wouldn't impact pedestrian or highway safety. It's only a very minor relocation.
I know.
Okay, thank you. So we have, I think, 3 more questions to go. Graham, do you want to add something first?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Ruislip has a particularly sensitive transport system, especially the road system. Small changes can have drastic effects. Anybody who's tried getting out of Ruislip at 8:45 in the morning will know that our main transport system is broken, and even 2 or 3% extra cars could push it over the edge easily into complete standstill. And once one bit of it stands still, that gridlock spreads to the rest of the system very rapidly. And I'm not sure you've necessarily, you say moving the bus stop by 5 meters. I agree, it doesn't sound a lot, but if it means that 2 vehicles can't get through every 5 minutes a particular space, that could lead to our usual gridlock. It's difficult to explain to somebody who hasn't experienced living in this area and seen how the traffic behaves, just how sensitive it is to small changes. And you talked about improving, reducing traffic and improving the other modes of transport. But you yourself said that you're only looking at 15% of the traffic to the store coming by non car mode. So that means that 85% of the people going to the store are coming by car. And I'm not sure you've necessarily addressed that properly. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, from our point of view, I think you can only reinforce the fact that this has to be done in conjunction with the Highways Authority, who will have to take their judgment about what's been presented to them. And hopefully you might smile at it, but hopefully they've got some knowledge locally that they can share with us as well, which will help inform that as we move forward. And on the bus, obviously that would be something that TfL would have to, the bus stop, the TfL would have to have some kind of engagement with, as it would be their bus stop that would be moved. Thank you. Daniel.
Okay, so back to question 8, impact on the neighbourhood. How will the impacts to local residents in the form of noise, light nuisance, litter and pollution and more service water be mitigated?
Martin, do you want to pick this up and help some of it as well?
Yeah, sure. With regards to noise, we've submitted a detailed noise assessment, which will be scrutinized by the council's environmental health officer. Similar with regards to the light nuisance, and also as should be noted that as we've kind of started this meeting, the site already includes a use that obviously generates these types of nuisances, if you can call them. So we wouldn't be making it any worse. And like I said, everything can be conditioned by suitably worded condition about having some sort of noise management, light and noise management strategy. In terms of litter, Grant, I think you said there's strategy within the Lidl's kind of the store manager to deal with that one.
Yeah, so we actually store all of our refuse inside the store, and as Toan said, that's taken as part of the servicing arrangement with our HGVs. So there'll be no litter outside. That's from store operations. Now, from a customer perspective and litter accumulating into the car park, our team in each of the stores do go around each morning to make sure that the car park and the external areas of the site is clear of litter, especially Lidl produced litter, because there's a brand and an image that obviously we want to uphold as providing high services to each areas. So it's something that's picked up as part of the store daily routine.
So we're on to question 9. Anybody else want to come in?
No, I think the last part of question 8 will be picked up on question 9 about the SUDs, about surface drainage.
Okay, so environmental and ecological issues. The ecological appraisal submitted in the application says the development has the potential to adversely impact valuable ecological features. So 3 questions. What is the biodiversity net gain for the proposals? Will the building have sustainable features? And will the car park be SUDS compliant?
Martin, do you want to start off this one, and then Towan maybe pick up the SUDS issue?
Yeah, of course. So with regards to the first question, so the ecological survey has in terms of being biodiversity net gain has resulted in a 30% net loss in terms of habitat units. So to achieve the 10% gain, which is the policy requirement, we will be doing as much landscaping as possible within our site, and the remainder of the units will be purchased off-site through a provider that obviously a broker that sells these credits. So the discussions with the provider are taking place now to ensure that we achieve the 10% gain to tick off that policy. In terms of the building, will it have any sustainable features? At the moment, the proposals include solar panels on the roof, as we've outlined. Tone, is there anything else from your perspective that you can tell us about from drainage perspective?
Yeah, so in terms of the surface water, this will be attenuated on site and then released into the network at an agreed discharge rate. I mean, we prepared a flood risk assessment and drainage strategy, and this accords with the SUDS hierarchy. So as part of the proposals, we're putting in permeable surfacing, rain gardens, and potentially rainwater harvesting to meet those SUDS requirements.
Can I just expand upon a few issues? So let's start with sustainability. So the building itself has what we call like a black box. So it very much looks at how its energy consumption is. And obviously all Lidl's energy is actually renewable energy that come to their stores. The black box is to help where there may be peaks and troughs in their energy consumption, so they can look at the individual store to ensure that it is being energy efficient. They have things like LED lighting within the store to ensure that it's the most efficient lighting that can come forward. And also, obviously, when the building has closed for the nighttime, all the lights will be switched off. So there is also some sensors on some of the lights outside. So obviously, the lights will only come on in the car park when it becomes dusk. So the lights are not on all the time. And again, the lights in the car park are directional lights, LED. So again, they don't create any light pollution to any of the surrounding properties. That's just to expand upon those points.
Thank you. Daniel.
Okay, so our last question. Sorry, Graham, do you want to come in?
Yes, it was just to follow up on the biodiversity net gain. It sort of sounded as if Ruislip was going to have a net loss, but somewhere else was going to get a net gain. Is that how the brokering thing works?
So let me expand upon this. So biodiversity net gain, BNG. So obviously the policy requirements in the local plan say that you have to achieve 10% net gain. On this site at the present time, obviously they've done a benchmark, i.e. what is on site at the present time. So that gives the baseline position. From that, obviously, you will then look at the proposal to seek what impact that proposal will have on the baseline position. At the present time, as we've said, there is a loss on this, and it's obviously a statutory requirement that we have to provide that 10%. Now, whether that can be all achieved on site or not are still up for debates at the moment. But if it can't be achieved all on site, there is obviously a requirement for the developer to find alternative sites where they could bring that biodiversity net gain to the area.
Right. I think Graham wants to follow up. Graham is head of RawMag, which is the Ruislip Woods area, so he has much more ecological knowledge than I do.
Thank you, Graham. The revised drawing, which was shared earlier, shows an even greater extent of the hedge on the southern side being destroyed, and a sea of tarmac on a much wider pedestrian entrance. I realise that very few of you are local to the area, probably very few of you have visited the area, but we are only a couple of generations on from this being farmland, and our hedgerows are some of the indicators of where fields used to be. They are field edge hedgerows, and they are very biodiverse. Uprooting them and replacing them with a few cherry laurels will not be acceptable. Also, unfortunately, back in June 2016, the Ruislip community suffered flooding when the River Pin burst its banks. I, along with other residents, were members of a full-blown Environment Agency flood alleviation scheme project team, and we're pretty well experienced in terms of the need to think in terms of catchments rather than drainage. I'd have thought drainage is a pre-2010 and pre-pitch report idea of once we can get surface water out of our boundary, we don't need to worry about it. That's why we're asking about sustainable drainage systems. And that's why we're particularly concerned, because from the revised drawing you've submitted, it looks like even more impermeable surface than the existing car park and building. So we really do want as much biodiversity kept on site as possible. And we're not really interested if you're buying through a broker for some biodiversity up in Caithness or the Welsh Mountains. We want biodiversity in our community. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So just coming to that point in relation to, obviously, none of the credits would go outside of the area. That is a statutory requirement as well. So if...
Could you clarify what you mean by area? Because
so
I'm certain there's no broker offering biodiversity net gain credits within London Bath Hillingdon. There might potentially be within the GLA area, but I'm certain there's nothing within Hillingdon.
Well, it will be in Hillingdon. It's the local authority. So it has to be in the boundaries of the local authority. It can't go outside of that local authority area. So that's if we are, obviously, we're still obviously in the application stage at the moment. It's still going through the consultations. The scheme may change again, depending on what consultee responses we get. So in relation to the BNG, I obviously hear your comments with regards to hedgerows, etc. And that's why the baseline assessment has been undertaken to clearly say this is what's on site at the moment. It is for us, i.e. the developers and Lidl, to find the appropriate 10% net gain that is required. Whether that is all on site or within the borough, that is something that we need to consider. And obviously we're waiting for the responses back from the council on that. In relation to drainage, clearly it is, again, the lead local authority will provide those statutory comments to say what is acceptable and what's not. Obviously, runoff, absolutely. Again, from Lidl's perspective, they would not want to design a scheme that would cause an impact on runoff water to any of the surrounding properties. That's not in their interest as well. So if it is deemed that it is required further mitigation, that is something that will be looked at. But again, we're at the present time, we're waiting for the responses back from the appropriate body to tell us whether or not the scheme that has been put forward is adequate and meets those requirements. So if there is more mitigation that may be required to ensure that doesn't cause an impact to the local residents, that is something we will have to take on board and find a solution to.
Okay, thank you for that answer. What I would draw all attendees' attention to is the fact that the original planning application was for a very standard little tin box. The first response has come back with something much more fitting in terms of the visual element of the building. The community of Ruislip has some expertise both in biodiversity and in SUDS applications. So we really need your next level in terms of BNG and SUDS, because we still appear to be at your opening gambit.
Thank you, Graham. So we're joined by Councillor Smallwood, who is one of the local councillors for the site. Councillor Smallwood.
Sorry, he has his hand up for a question at the end.
Oh, for a question at the end. Okay. Right.
Shall
Next
we
question
move
then?
to question 10? Yeah. So, the U2 bus runs between Hillingdon and Uxbridge and comes nowhere near Ruislip. Northwood is not in a different borough. Deliveries can't be made from Park Lane because there's no such road in Ruislip. And the whole plan is handled under the title Orchard Inn, despite that name never having been used locally. How can Ruislip residents take seriously both the proposals you make and your assertions that the new memorial would mark the historical significance to the Second World War of the original building, when there are inaccuracies throughout, and when the German supermarket's proposals don't even use the building's correct name? Do we have anybody to answer that last question?
When you're on mute, Kevin.
Anyone?
Let me come in because I thought that we had someone who was going to speak on
Kevin,
that.
Sorry, it's my fault. I had my microphone on to try and cut the noise down. Sorry. So, yeah, obviously, I'll take it up. There was a typo on the submission that's been made, and we'll actually ensure that's corrected. I think that was referred to a bit earlier. The only thing I would say about all of these issues is that obviously we are going through a planning process at the minute. We've put an application in, and council officers have now got to judge what we put in against policy and come to a judgment themselves in the balance as to whether they want to recommend this for approval to a council committee. After that stage, if it gets through that stage of planning permission, then there obviously will be conditions attached to that application, which will ensure that Lidl performs exactly as the application has been permitted. And it could be that many of these issues will get swept up into those planning conditions. And on top of that will also be a legal agreement which will ensure that this actually happens. So you can rest assured that whatever is agreed, there is a commitment from Lidl to deliver to what's been asked of them.
Can I just expand upon that? So obviously we've still got a long way to go in planning. Yeah, and clearly there are comments that are being raised by the local residents, and I'm sure there'll be comments raised by the statutory consultees. So we will work with all parties to seek a solution that hopefully addresses many of those concerns that are being raised. There's a long way to go. This is part of this process. Is obviously having a discussion with the local residents and for them to obviously again put any comments they have forward. It's still early in the stages of planning, and obviously we'll try and keep you abreast of changes that may come forward from any of the comments that do arrive from either statutory consultees or from yourself. But we do welcome these comments because you are the local residents, you know the area a lot better than any of us around this table at the moment. So we will value quite much your comments. And as I say, if changes are required through either statutory consultees or by yourselves, we will take those on board.
Daniel.
Okay, that's our 10 questions. So we're going to go to our questions and answers, the open ones. We have people putting their hands up. We are going to go to the two councillors first. Peter Smallwood and Philip. Is Philip here? Yes, he is. If I unmute both of you, I think they both have a question, but if I unmute both at the same time, we don't.
I'll let my better looking and wiser colleague go first.
Very modest, Peter. Thank you. Yeah, okay, thank you. Full disclosure to begin with. I mean, as one of the Ruislip Ward councillors, I think I can speak for Peter here. We were both at the exhibition. I stood there for 3 hours talking to the residents about their concerns. And with my colleagues, we've submitted a robust response to the consultation, and we're supporting the local listing. So I think we need to be open about that. But I have two questions, really. My first question relates to the pre-application discussions you all have had with Hillingdon as the local planning authority. Now, I know that planning is a subjective matter, even between planning professionals, let alone lay people like ourselves. However, I understand you had a pretty strong response from Hillingdon about the value of the existing building and the contribution it makes to the conservation area. And I'm wondering really what changes you've made on the back of the pre-app discussions of the proposals as a result of that, or have you simply carried on regardless on what is seen by many as a speculative planning application? That's my first question. My second one, if I may, I must just say something about the transport statement methodology. There's reference to a staff travel plan. Now, in my experience, that's the sort of thing that developers usually trot out to try and get highways officers on board, but in practice, it very rarely happens. I would throw back that challenge. So I would welcome any comment on that as well, please. Thank you.
You'd like to pick up the pre-app point?
I can take that one. Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, the plans that we've sent for the public consultations were the same plans we've submitted for the pre-application advice. So the pre-app scheme, as we call it, obviously included a different design, or like the original design with just a kind of standard Lidl with brick elevation. Obviously for the public following the public consultation and following the pre-app response from the council, we have revised the elevations and design of the store as we've shown in the first slides, where it's more appropriate in terms of the conservation area, and it takes cues from the existing building and local vernacular. So I think we've listened in terms of the key comments on the design and try to make it more appropriate to the local area.
We have to have things like that.
Apologies, I can't. There's a problem with my camera, so that's why it's not working.
Okay. And Towan, do you want to pick up on the travel plan, the staff travel plan?
Yeah, in terms of the travel plan, you mean this is a standard requirements for all applications nationally. I mean, the objective is to try and reduce, as I say, car travel, and there's initiatives in there which we try to promote, both for staff and customers when they're operational. Yes, some authorities that they don't monitor the actual travel plan. But I think from our perspective, we do actually monitor and implement those travel plans to try and reduce car travel for staff and visitors. We use a system called Susco, which tries to promote walk trips and cycle trips to the store by offering discounts or offers. So that they're part of this Susco tool that we use.
Daniel.
And Peter, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel, and thanks to the RRA for putting on this event and to you for hosting it. Just to make a couple of points to reassure residents, myself and Councillor Riley and Councillor Cawthorne, with the help of our great Member of Parliament, David Simmons, we've called in this application. For those that don't know what a call-in is, this is a mechanism available to councillors to be able to ensure that this does appear in front of a planning committee and it gets full public scrutiny, which I think the residents of Ruislip deserve. The second thing we've done, just as a bit of an update, is we have written to our fantastic cabinet member Steve Tuckwell, who we are lobbying hard to ensure that this gets a local listing. Many of you would have seen the consultation that was out the back end of last year, the beginning of this year. I've lost quite track of time, and we're hoping that following that consultation closing, that the cabinet will recommend local listings. So I think they're just helpful things to know. My questions are around the practicalities of things like Breakspear Road South closing. We're about to see that close for a month due to HS2 works. We probably have another meeting on that. But how has that been taken into account when it comes to transport? Because I can imagine if we have the increased traffic and that close, you won't even be able to get out of Ruislip at all. And secondly, I have to say, whilst Kevin, who's on the call from the planning team, has been very diligent in responding to our emails, I have been extremely disappointed with Lidl themselves. I wrote quite a passionate email around, regardless of whether this planning application gets accepted or not, protecting the heritage and getting some reassurances away from the planning process from Lidl's chief executive that he would personally take responsibility for protecting the World War II heritage there, and unfortunately heard nothing back. So it would be nice to hear from Lidl about the things that actually are really they care about. Oh, sorry, local residents really care about in terms of heritage and history, and in and around the transport bit of this, where I really do not believe that this works. It really does worry me that it's incredibly busy there now. If you add a supermarket and then you close one of the roads, no one will be able to get anywhere. So I guess those are my two questions and just a couple of observations for residents. And thank you very much again for putting this call on. And you can contact any councillor at any time about this issue. And I would also encourage, then, if I can, people to go onto Hillingdon's website and respond to the planning application consultation, because it's important that voices are heard. Thank you again.
So, Towan, do you want to pick up the future road closures in the area and their impact and how you assess that?
Yeah, so as part of the transport assessment, as I said, we've scoped that out with the Highway Authority, but as part of this current transport assessment, that hasn't been requested in terms of the future closure of that road. So basically, as part of the new, well, like I said, we're waiting for those consultation responses from the local Highway Authority, and if that is requested, we will do another assessment to assess that impact. But currently, the transport assessment doesn't include future scenarios.
Okay. And Grant, do you want to pick up about the heritage commitment?
Yeah, there's a few things I just wanted to pick up. So just as a example, we do try and hire locally. So in regards to the staff transport, we do put the job adverts out to the local community because that's the people we want to work in our stores. As an example, South Ruislip, the average distance for our colleagues in stores, they live within a 5 kilometre distance. So we do try our best to try and get local people in the borough, to work in those stores to reduce the need to drive around and to promote that sustainable transport. In regards to that, the heritage, Councillor Peter Smallwood, I haven't seen your email. Apologies, it's not come through to us, as you probably appreciate. If you wrote it to our chief exec, he oversees the expansion of over 1,000. We're nearly up to 1,000 stores. We're looking for 1,000 more. There's many elements and arms to the business, not just the property side. We're probably best placed at the Wembley Property Office to answer that email, so I can't really comment until I've seen what's been said. So by all means, please forward that over to us, because we will respond in a very quick and efficient way, as we have done, I believe, throughout this process with the Ruislip residents, with the Polish War Memorial Society. So yeah, if you can pass that through, we'll get over to it and get back to you.
Yep, I will send that over. But many people on this call have had it.
Should we go to John Morse?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Can you? Yeah, right. My concern is in the report, Trix has clearly identified 85% of the people traveling to this will cover by car. I then also know, I'll look at policy DME1, which means the air quality should be at least neutral. That's a planning issue. Yeah. Now, I can understand why we've not had a clear indication of the number of movements you expect. And I'll particularly go to a particular point, the roundabout of the White Bear. This is a very unusual roundabout. And have you done any modelling of this roundabout? Because I'm going back to local knowledge. Is the congestion around this roundabout is intensive, particularly at certain times. So I think this has been absent from your report. There's been no outline of when you think the car movements and the number of cars will actually come to this site. Thank you.
So, and that sounds like one for you.
Sorry. Yeah, the transport assessment is quite detailed. So basically, it does actually show what the number of trips are, presents what the number of trips are during the peak periods between 8 till 9 in the morning, 5 till 6 in the evening on a Saturday peak, which is like, I think it's 12 till 1. So that's all the traffic that's generated in those periods are actually distributed along a traffic flow model. That's presented in the transport assessment. I mean, I won't go through the actual details, but if you look at it, it does show it in all the traffic figures. And we have done junction modeling at these junctions as well. We know, that from the queue surveys, there are queues backing up, but I mean the way it's assessed is assessed on average queue lengths, journey times.
Name slowly.
So it's based on journey times and the average queues. So I mean, what it assesses is the actual impact of the little store against the baseline conditions. But that's all presented in the transport assessment.
Tom, obviously, for everyone on the call, clearly there is existing Travelodge there, and obviously there was a pub, so there are existing vehicle movements that were already on the site. Do you want to just expand upon that to say what the situation is with those?
Yeah, there are existing traffic generated by the site. The TA for robustness doesn't exclude, remove that from the highway network. So what we've done is a worst case scenario assessment where the trips, where we haven't removed the existing uses or trips generated by the existing uses off that highway network, and the assessment shows that there wouldn't be a severe impact on the highway network, even for this robust case.
Daniel.
So, should we go to Mira next? Mira, I'll unmute you.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So my question is this. In South Ruislip, on that store, you've substantially increased your parking spaces when you removed the bed store. So clearly, at the point that the South Ruislip store was created, there was not sufficient spaces for the parking there. My concern is, and I live on Sharps Lane, that I will end up having people parking on my road, blocking my way, and causing congestion on the road because there are not sufficient parking on the site at the orchard. Has anybody taken that into account at all? Because clearly at the time that the South Ruislip store was opened, there was not sufficient parking, and that was clearly obvious because a lot of people used to park on the other neighbouring site where you've got TK Maxx and Wicks.
Stefan, Grant, Towan, one of you want to take that?
Yeah, I can say that. In terms of the car parking, we have to meet standards, car parks maximum standards. So that's that's where initially we take our car parking numbers from, because we can't over provide parking because that's an incentive to drive to the site. However, we have done our own assessment in terms of car parking accumulation exercises based on similar stores, where we believe that the parking that is proposed does meet the maximum demands for that site. So an assessment has been done.
But I agree that, but I've no doubt you did an assessment with the South Ruislip store as well, and there wasn't sufficient parking. So what will happen in those circumstances if we do develop a problem with people parking and congesting the roads on South Ruislip, on Sharps Lane, Church Avenue, those areas? Has that not even been considered, or is this a case of we'll look at it if the problem arises, at which point it's too late?
Grant, do you want to come in there?
I was just going to say at South Ruislip we had the opportunity to extend the car parking, not because it wasn't sufficient, but because the Benson for Beds lease came to an end. So there was the opportunity to utilise that to extend the car parking spaces. Obviously, that's recently completed, so we haven't got the statistics of how full that car park is. But every site's on a different basis. South Ruislip, we had the benefit of that land to extend, whereas you go across London, quite often we don't have car parking to that extent.
Yeah, but what has been the impact then in those other areas on the neighbouring properties?
So I'm going to have to defer to you on that one.
I mean, I did work on that South Ruislip site, so I can't really comment on that one. But I mean, we like I said before, we use the data. We do car parking assessments and accumulations, and these will be assessed by the Highway Authority in terms of whether the car parking provisions are sufficient or not, or the other way around, we're providing over parking. So the council, the Highway Authority will assess that with us. It's not in Lidl's interest to under provide, or we need to actually find a balance and meet both sustainable requirements as well.
Yeah, no, I get that it's not in your, it doesn't work to under provide, but the problem is that it could happen. And a store of that size, you're not far off from some of the others. And as I said, I used to go to this, I do go to the South Ruislip one, which is another thing that I'm concerned about, is that I will have people from outside of the area, from outside of the immediate area coming in, which is exactly what I was doing when I was going down to South Ruislip. But thank you.
Yeah, I think that's similar to what I put forward earlier. When you got a more local store, there's a reduction in vehicle mileage.
But there's an increase in people coming from further out there, because as I said, I live on Sharps Lane, and I used to go to the South Ruislip one. When there wasn't one in South Ruislip, I would go to the one in Pinner, I think it was. So we'll have an increase of people coming from, people within the area won't necessarily be driving in, but what we will have is people that are from the external areas driving in. And that's where I do have the concern. And as I said, I have seen it firsthand with the store in South Ruislip. And I've seen lots of people that used to park on the Wix site simply because there wasn't sufficient parking. And it was an absolute mess. I've seen people that have been almost run over because the cars are trying to fight for spaces on there until you've expanded it recently.
It supports our further aim for Hillingdon to try and bring more stores to the area, to stop people having to leave their local area to shop elsewhere. So it would actually go in hand with what we're looking to do. Obviously, we've got our Hillingdon site, which will be coming forward in a planning sense soon, which hopefully will take up some of the need and reduce the amount of people travelling from, let's say, Ickenham up to Ruislip. So it does fit in our overall strategy of if we can fit a store within a 20k catchment, then we could reduce the journeys down as a result.
Right, so that's within a 20-mile radius, is that what you're saying?
No,
so you said 20k.
No, 20,000 people. Just
okay, right.
Not
Right, okay.
Should we go to Mushtaq? Sorry, go on.
No, I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, so we got to Mushtaq. He's been waiting since before we open for questions.
Hi, thank you very much for taking this question. First question is to the councillor. Why do we actually need another supermarket when we've got Waitrose down the road, we've got places on the high street, and this just is going to screw up the high street, just like having another Gales to, all the local coffee shops. It doesn't promote local business. It just promotes a conglomerate, which already has a store in South Ruislip, which is now expanded. And for those of us who live near that roundabout, like we do, also on Sharps Lane, that roundabout is extremely difficult to navigate. And it's a very selective analysis that you've done about the traffic, because you did it on a Friday and a Saturday. Well, that's not when the worst traffic is, because a lot of people don't work on Fridays, and certainly they don't work on Saturdays. If you're there on a Monday to Thursday in the morning and in the evenings, it's absolutely chock-a-block. So you've done your analysis very selectively to suit your own purposes. I frankly do not see the need for another supermarket. We've got a Waitrose down the road. we've got a Sainsbury's. We've got. I mean, I know it fits your purpose. You're a burgeoning supermarket chain, the most successful in the UK at the moment. But that's not really relevant to us. We've in Sharps Lane, for example, is a one-way street, but you still get people going up the wrong way down there, completely ignoring the no entry signs. So I have.
Right, could you wrap up the question so we can get more people in?
So that is my question. The question is of the councillor, why do we need another store? And the other question is, why have you done an analysis that was very selective?
I mean, I could answer the surveys and assessment periods, because that's scoped out with the highway authority, and usually the Friday and the Saturday is the busiest operational traffic, peak periods for Lidl. So you wouldn't do an assessment, on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, in the afternoon, because that's not when the peak Lidl operation is. So we have to assess the worst case in terms of what the Lidl impact will be, and that's why those time periods are chosen.
But this is about how this impacts local residents. That's why you're consulting with us. It's not about how it impacts Lidl.
Yeah, but we have to assess, on a typical day, and that's why we agreed that with the highway authority.
And our customers are pretty savvy. If they know they're going to be stuck in gridlock traffic at 8 o'clock or in the rush hours, they're not going to go shop at Lidl at rush hour time. They'll go at the quieter times during the day.
Dan, do you want me to
This
just
isn't about your customers, it's about the residents.
Just from a council perspective, Mr. I understand it. It's not for us. We can't dictate who puts planning applications in for what, where, and when. Our lives would be a lot easier if we could. I have the same feelings as you do, as I think Councillor Cawthorne and Councillor Riley do. We wonder whether the need for another supermarket is needed in Ruislip, but unfortunately, that is not a planning condition of whether somebody is putting something there that's going to work or not work. I personally don't think it will, but that's not a planning condition. We share the exact same concerns, but we cannot stop people putting planning applications in for things. Unfortunately, probably fortunately, it would be bad if we did. But on this particular one, I agree. I have the same questions you do, but I guess Lidl have done their homework and think it's potentially something that would work.
Unfortunately, we have to consider what's before us, unfortunately.
So if I could just probably assist on this question that's been raised. So the planning authority have to ensure that any proposal for a food store does, one, not create an impact on any centres. Yes, because if it creates an impact on a centre, then it is detrimental to that centre itself in terms of its health and well-being. So from a planning perspective, we obviously have to provide evidence as to whether or not this proposal will be or could create an impact on the existing centres. And that's what the council will then...
I think they're covering most of the things we said anyway.
That's when the council will themselves appraise the proposal to seek with the evidence that's been put forward. They may do it in-house, they may go out to third parties to assess that information that has been put forward to them. So impact is a significant part of planning, and they can refuse it if they feel there is an impact on this proposal will have on a local centre. The other aspect they can look at is obviously the sequential aspect, because again, from a planning perspective, they have to look at in-centre first. If there is no sites available in-centre, they then go to the next defined area, which is edge of centre, and then the next defined area, which is outer centre. So from a planning perspective, yes, there are potential reasons they could refuse if, one, it creates an impact on a centre, and two, there is a sequential preferable site available. So that just helps you in terms of, so obviously Lidl and ourselves have gone through that, and we consider that there isn't any impact on the centres and there are no other sites available. So hence the reason why we have obviously put forward this application, but that hopefully that helps the justification for why they're bringing forward a food store. Obviously, in planning terms, it can't be on any branded. It has to be obviously choice. They can't say you can't go there because it's a certain brand of food store. So from that perspective, and again, not everybody wants to shop at Waitrose. Not everyone wants to shop at Morrison's. It's customers' choice as to where they want to shop. And therefore, at the present time, there is obviously a demand for Lidl, as you've mentioned. They are high on the agenda in terms of people's choice of shopping. It's all about choice for customers.
We go to Jeff. Jeff.
Yeah, hi. Hello. It follows on from the previous couple of comments, and it might be a question of business case rather than planning, but it's based on what we've heard so far this evening. If the thought is that 80% of the shoppers will come by car, and the South Ruislip store is 40% bigger than the proposed store, with double the parking spaces, why would I even think of going to the local store? Why wouldn't I go 10 minutes away with double the car parking and 40% bigger floor space? And I'd also comment that we all know locally that both Marks and Spencer's and Morrison's gave the high street a go over the last few years and quite quickly shut. But my question is, I guess, business case rather than planning. And I don't know if there's anyone here from Lidl who can answer that business case of why would we go to the Orchard site when we can go to South Ruislip with 80% of us arriving by car?
I mean, across the country and more specifically London, we have stores that are within 100 metres of each other because we believe that it serves two different catchments. Now, it's slightly different in this scenario because this is it's Ruislip. It's a convenience-sized store with 70 odd car parking spaces, but the data and analysis has been completed by the team at head office and in the regions to support that this store would be a success. The crux of it is that we wouldn't have expanded at the rate we are expanding, and have aspirations to expand with another 1,000 stores if we didn't go for sites like this. This store we believe will work. We're going to invest a lot of money into the area. So it's something that's been taken seriously, and from a business case sense, we believe it stacks up. The proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah, and just to piggyback from Grant's comment, then it's 3 miles away from the existing South Ruislip store to the Orchard site. Now, in rush hour traffic, that can be 20 to 30 minutes. So it's giving people the choice that live in the locality to shop with us, and providing choice is important.
Sorry, once you've screwed up the traffic in Ruislip, it'll take even longer. Thank you.
We go to Claire. Claire, you're already unmuted, I think.
Yeah. Could you tell me, have you actually measured the volumes of traffic going across the roundabout at school peak times, school, drop off and pick up in the afternoons? Have you actually got figures for that traffic running through that roundabout at that time?
Alan?
It's Tom again. Yeah, we have. We've surveyed on Friday from between 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So that covers the main school peak period.
What about the morning though?
The morning we've surveyed between 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Again, that covers the school morning sort of drop-off times as well.
Right. And again, back to that question. Have you actually done a survey of local people to see that local people want this new choice in that particular area?
I think that's more of a planning question, isn't it?
Marcin, how many consultations or responses do we get through the consultation?
We've had nearly 700 responses, so that's a fair indication.
Thank you.
Good. The next question is just an email address that shows up, but you are unmuted, so you can go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
My question is, how long is the construction going to take, the proposed construction, and will there be a strict control over the nuisance, the noise, the what is considered to be very disturbing? Because I live very close to the site itself.
Martin, Grant, do you want to give an overview of post-planning timetable and then talk about construction management plans?
Yeah, Martin, do you want to start first with about the conditions? And then I'll jump in.
Yeah, so there will very likely be planning conditions relating to the construction method statement, demolition method statement, which will have to obviously include a number of mitigation measures to ensure there's no adverse impact on the amenity of the residents. I think that was definitely going to happen given the surrounding area, as it's predominantly residential. In terms of the construction, Grant, do you want to take? I believe it's about 32 weeks.
Yeah, roughly about that. About
32 weeks.
Specific, but roughly 32 weeks. Yeah.
Thank you.
So in the list of people that I said we'd go to, we said we would go to Elizabeth next, but Jackie's had her hand up for about an hour, so I think we let her speak.
I am so grateful because I can't find my Zoom hand and my real hand is getting tired. Very, very quick thing for clarification, but I think important. It was mentioned by Lidl, and quite rightly, because the Hillingdon website shows an original decision, end consultation date of the 20th, which is only 2 days away. But in fact, it also shows now that the press expiry date is not until the 26th of March. And as far as I am aware, and perhaps the councillors can clarify this, it's the farthest out date of any set of consultation processes. So the longest date away is the press expiry date, which is 6 days longer, 6 days away from the actual original consultation date. So it is my belief that we do have until the 26th of March if people wish to make representations, which I thought was an important comment to make in terms of people's time span to deal with this. But I don't know if anybody else would like to comment on that and clarify for me whether I am correct.
So I can comment on that. So I'm the planning consultant.
Yeah.
So in theory, you can make representations all the way up to committee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So you don't have to worry about the dates in terms of the press notice or the statutory 21 days to make representations. The council have the right to accept any representations in theory all the way up to the committee.
But they do also have the right to refuse after a certain date.
And
that is made clear. That is made clear by Hillingdon Council. So I just abjure people to be a little worried on that. But I would certainly say we have up until the 26th or beyond.
I would agree with that 100%.
Not the 20th,
Yeah.
which makes a big difference for people.
I think we'd agree with. I think Philip and I would agree with 100%. And up to the 26th, we would work with residents to make sure that their representations were made strongly. Where they would be refused is if somebody a day before put in a 20-page document giving their application against it, where it couldn't be fairly considered in that amount of time. But I would encourage residents up to the 26th, and even if needs be beyond to continue making representations, whatever they may be.
My concern was to get across that it's not the 20th.
Good point.
Just to add to that, in our experience, the council are relaxed about taking comments right up to the end almost. So yes, I go along with what Peter said. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Who did we have next? It was Elizabeth. Sorry.
Yes. I think I've unmuted myself.
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. Good. Actually, my question was sort of taken by one of the earlier questioners, Mushtaq, because I'm really concerned about the fact that Lidl aren't bothered about this, I don't suppose at all, but how they would affect the Ruislip High Street. I think the Ruislip High Street does struggle at times, and I would expect that the Hillingdon Council would want to protect the main shopping area where a lot of people will be able to go by foot anyway. So that's really not necessarily asking a question again, because I know we've already had the answer to that. But also, I just wanted to point out that when the lady was saying about she lived in Sharps Lane, and if there were insufficient parking spaces actually at Lidl, people would park in Sharps Lane. In my experience, the way that people will park where they want to. Even if the whole of the Lidl shopping area would actually have vacant spaces, people will still park down Sharps Lane, because if it's more convenient for them, they'll do so. And also, I just wanted to know about the parking. Would there be a limit on the length of time that people could park in that car park? Because we know that people, once they've parked a car somewhere, they like to leave it for as long as they possibly can.
I can answer that second part of the question. So it's obviously within our interest, like you say, to make sure that customers can use the car park frequently, so we don't have people who park there the whole day and pick up later at night. We do have ANPR systems that we would install. This is an area where we'd probably install that solution. I don't know what the limit would be. Typically, our standard is about 90 minutes, but that's something we would want to agree with the council as well.
Thank you.
Yes, are you still here?
Hello, yes, I am still here. Yeah, I may have to rush to the door because the district nurse is due in a minute. My question is, would Lidl, as an employer, be willing to provide free insurance for staff travelling to the site by cycle, i.e. personal insurance against accidents and things?
That's a company-wide policy that I wouldn't be able to answer here, but we can definitely take that away and raise it internally.
Okay, that was quick.
Thank you.
So do you think you could and then get back to us?
Yeah. I'll get back to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Go by yourself, Daniel.
Yep. To Graham.
Sorry, I think Joan and Riz were both before me.
Okay, Joan, can we find Joan? Joan's already unmuted. Go.
Right. I'm an Ickenham resident, and the road may be a B road, but it's a main north-south access road, and it takes coming through Ickenham, you have the traffic coming from Swakely's roundabout and from the Master Brewer centre, and they meet in Ickenham. Now, I've lived here 50 years, and the various ways that they have tried to ease the traffic at the Ickenham junction have been many. But if you have someone at the the traffic on the north-south thing will inevitably increase. It's bad enough at the moment, but if you have if the Ickenham junction gets mired up, it will affect traffic north and south, because if stuff coming from the north can't turn right, it will stop stuff coming north, coming north-south. But basically, the White Bear roundabout will affect stuff going towards the north, and it will still be, since it's going to be more traffic than there is now. Have they really considered that in their traffic assessment?
So, Towan, do you want to talk about that? And maybe, I imagine, Grant, you want to pick up about the Hillingdon anyway, don't you?
Yeah, well, like I said, we have assessed, Ilkeston Road and the local highway network, which is in the transport assessment. Let's see what the actual question was.
The question was, have you assessed its effect on other junctions nearby?
Yeah, we have. We've assessed the junctions that's been scoped out with the highway authority. But I think, like I said earlier, the perception is that this stall will generate more traffic during the peak periods, but a new store here wouldn't cause people to just suddenly shop twice, for example, go to two different stores or increase the amount of food that they purchase. So a lot of the traffic during the peak period, which is when the congestion occurs, there's not a significant increase in vehicle trips. But like I said, most of the trips are already on the highway network, and they're passing the site, and they basically go in, visit the store, and leave again. So there's not an actual increase, a significant increase in traffic as a whole during those peak periods. I think Grant touched that on, before earlier, that, little customers won't go and make a primary trip to a food store during the congested period. And I've like I said, I've done about 120 stores, and that perceptions are from various people. The question itself is always raised, but from an assessment period, a lot of the traffic is passed by.
But it doesn't have to pass by. It has to go round the White Bear roundabout, which is not a straightforward junction.
Yeah, that's correct, but that forms part of our assessment as well. So, the highway authority will review that, and if we are required to do further assessment, we will do.
Right, did you want to say anything about the master brewer? Because obviously there's another plan for that as well, isn't there, which would resolve that issue.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Just to clarify, was that just to understand when that's coming forward?
I think the question was being made about traffic coming up from the master brewer to this site. Were we going to be adding to it?
I can't think where the master brewer is.
But
by Hillingdon Station.
By Hillingdon Station.
Yeah.
But I think so. The point is that there is a current plan for an additional Lidl at that site alongside Hillingdon Station, which would obviously help Joan with the traffic movements coming up from there through, take his roundabout and onto White Bear.
Yeah, no, definitely. We are looking to submit planning in the coming weeks, months for the site in Hillingdon. So it would, if subject to the planning applications sort of mirroring one another, we would probably be looking to build them out at a similar time. So and opening at a similar time, but obviously that's site specific and depends on planning and feedback.
Daniel.
Do we go to Riz? Riz is next, already unmuted.
Yes, hello. So I have a few questions, please. The first one to Kevin, who mentioned he had about 700 responses. Are you able to, Kevin, give some sort of indication of how many are for and against the Lidl development?
I don't have it in front of me. My recollection was there were about somewhere between 15 or 17% in favour of it. But if you go to the council website and look the planning application up online, there is something called a statement of community involvement there, which will give you all the details of all the responses and gives you the measure of how many people have responded so far.
Okay, thank you. Second part, so Lidl's reputation is pretty much known as a discount food store, catering for sort of the price-conscious consumers. So how do you think its presence in this specific part of Ruislip, and I do apologise if I'm sounding a bit snobbish here, in comparison to Ruislip Manor, Ruislip Gardens, South Ruislip, West Ruislip, aligns with the expectation of the local residents of Ruislip, especially given its distinctiveness of this part of the area? Because I don't feel a Lidl is the right fit for this region.
So I'll pick this one up. Hi, Riz. Good to see you again. we're the fastest growing supermarket for the last 15 months, month on month. And we're the third. I think we're the third largest now in London. The customers moving over to us aren't coming to us just from Aldi, Iceland, etc. They're also coming to us from Tesco's, M&S, Waitrose. As part of the reason is because of our expansion. So we're more accessible to people in areas that we weren't previously accessible, but also because I'm not in the sales team, but our quality of products is increasing. I think if you look at what the stores looked like back in the 90s to now, you can clearly see as a brand and as a retailer, we are constantly improving our standards and trying to compete. So whilst we are cheaper, we also do like to pride ourselves on quality as well.
Okay. I have a question about the road markings that you have. So I'm actually directly opposite your site. So I'm probably the most impacted person in this call. I'm pretty sure I am. So because my house is literally right opposite. I struggle to pull out of my driveway as it is if I want to turn towards the high street. Adding this yellow box, I think the way you can't cross in will have a significant impact on my home. In the same way, you guys are interested and trying to grow the brand of Lidl specifically. I'm concerned about protecting my property because it will devalue it significantly. So I have concerns about that. Maybe it's something I can take up directly with someone, to discuss that, because it will have a significant impact on mine and also my neighboring properties as well. So that's more of a unique thing, and we can discuss that offline if you think more appropriate. The second point I had was, just give me one moment, unless you wanted to respond to that at all at this point.
I think we spoke at a public consultation, I think it was back in November, that house prices around new stores do go up, as well as go down. If we had a crystal ball and could tell which direction it would go, I would buy or sell property in that area before a Lidl opens. It's very much.
I did laugh at that, to be honest, right? I mean, you're saying to me that having a Lidl opposite my home would increase the house price. Look, I know that's a very subjective thing, so we don't need to debate on that point now. I did have one more point scribbled down, but unfortunately I can't find it. So I think I'll just leave it as that. But thank you.
Graham?
Yeah, so I had 2 points. One, the cultural and heritage value of the orchard. One thing I'm trying to work out is if there is no orchard, it sort of makes the Spitfire Memorial, it loses its connection. You've got a memorial to the fact that this place was used by the Polish Air Force in World War II, which incidentally was one of the most successful squadrons in the Battle of Britain, if you look up the stats. But there's no actual place anymore. There's just a large supermarket.
Yeah.
And I think that is it's one of our major problems as a community, is that you want to take a treasured local location with strong historical reasons for many of us who live here and replace it with a supermarket. It's not what you'd call a cultural improvement. And so that's something I think you need to address. Even if it's just, do you call it the Orchard Lidl? Or, we've had to do that in places as well, where people have wanted to take over named buildings, and we've basically persuaded them to keep the name, so that at least the name carries on. Because as has usually proved to be the case, the name lasts an awful lot longer than whoever wants to move in there. So take the Swan on Ruislip High Street. It's been there for, I think, 200-300 years. It's always been called the Swan. But recently we've had Café Rouge at the Swan, and then we have Annabella's at the Swan. But the Swan is still there, so you can still use it. How do we keep the name the Orchard if there's no building left?
I think that's a good question, actually. I mean, we in discussions with our heritage consultant earlier today, I mean, he made the very valuable point that in and of itself, the building is itself as a building not of particular merit, because it is like a lot of mock Tudor pubs of that period that were constructed. It's not in itself something that was important, but it's the essence of what it represents, i.e. as the space. We hear what you're saying about that. And I think that is one of the issues which we don't have all the answers to at this stage. We have, until we've worked further with the Polish Airmen Association, understand what they want to do with their model, which may well be something they want to bring back to that site because they recognise themselves that it's of importance. It's a bit difficult for us to frame what that looks like.
So it's not actually up to them where it goes. They haven't put in any planning permission to move it. So when they finish refurbishing it, it has to go back exactly where it was until there's a new planning application.
Well, I don't know the ins and outs of that. The legality.
It's a locally listed structure.
Yeah, okay, but it's something that is okay. I don't want to get in the argument about it because I'm not the owner of it. But as they put it to us, the Polish Airmen Association have put to us that they own that model, and that's why they've taken it away and have yet to decide what they want to do with it as the owners of that model. Now, maybe that's incorrect, and we've got to tease that out. But as I think we said at the beginning when this came up as a question, there is work still to be done around that, which is why we have not yet come to a conclusion, although the planning process will, as to how we're going to treat that and where and in what status that has with any legal agreement or condition that's put on the planning application.
I'd just add to that. In the consultation that we went out to, we dedicated the whole question to what the local people would like to see as a nod to the historical significance of the orchard.
Okay, and this might. Sorry.
And can I just? It's Marcin, the one of the planning consultant team. So we've also had discussions with the council's enforcement team leader, because he's obviously contacted us when the Spitfire replica was removed. So he's informed us that it has been agreed that the Spitfire monument can be removed from the site temporarily and stored securely whilst it's waiting and undergoing renovation. And these arrangements have been made by the Polish Air Force Committee. And the council at the moment is accepting that this removal is temporary, but as you correct, because it's a locally listed building, it does need planning input from it. But the council is, by the sounds of it, by the team leaders' response, is that they're happy to keep it temporarily out of the site while it's being renovated. But as we said, the future of it is still to be confirmed. We're waiting for the council to come back to us formally on how they want to deal with it.
And my second point really was about the traffic and the roundabout, etc. It's hard to stress just how sensitive our traffic system is. But I just thought of an example to give you. Several years ago, a young man was very sadly murdered at West Ruislip, outside the parade of shops at West Ruislip, near the Tesco's, if you're aware of the area. And there was a Gold Command meeting with the police and councillors and the Residents Association. And we spent the first 3/4 of an hour of a meeting dealing with a murder, discussing how we were going to cope with the traffic. Because basically, within 5 minutes of this poor young man being murdered, the traffic had started to grind to a halt. And within another 15 minutes, the entire area of Ruislip was in gridlock. And I'm talking down to Ruislip Gardens, South Ruislip, Northwood, Eastcote, the Ickenham, the entire thing had just ground to a halt because one road was closed. And that's just an example of how things can go really badly wrong with our traffic system. We may be in London, but we don't have a lot of alternative routes. If you want to get from A to B, there is quite often only one way of getting there. And if it's not there, the alternative is a 5-mile detour to get there. So, we don't have lots of parallel roads that you can just go down any one of them by just shooting along. So please bear that in mind. And I don't know if your traffic modeling has showed this up. If it hasn't done its job properly. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the comments. I mean, I think you're right. It's going to be something we have to take up with the local authority in conversation with them during this period. I just hope the local authority traffic planners themselves have some recognition of that in what you're saying. And
I just hope we have some traffic planners left.
Not much I can do about that, I'm afraid.
We have 4 people asking questions and just a few minutes each, so maybe a couple of minutes. Shivani and then Gareth.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for this meeting. I live on Wood Lane, very close to the White Bear pub, and I am very interested in hearing where the 15% of non-car users, customers coming to Lidl, where that figure is coming from, who that comprises of, whether or not that includes locals who, let's say, within a half-mile radius, quarter-mile radius. I ask this because Waitrose is at the end of my road, and very frequently I see neighbours on the surrounding roads travelling by car. Half that reason is because this roundabout, this White Bear roundabout, is so treacherous for us local residents who are used to driving on it. Now, if we start including pedestrians, then that becomes inherently much more dangerous. And then on top of that, if we're having people who aren't used to this roundabout coming in, I'm really, really very concerned what this will do for local traffic safety around this area. For instance, my father, he's 70 years old. We live less than 200 steps from the Orchard site. I cannot imagine that there would be a single moment where he would think, I'm going to walk across the three roundabout exits with full grocery shopping bags with people who aren't used to navigating this roundabout. So if I, living within 200 steps of this roundabout, of this site, count as part of the 15% of users that would not be arriving by car, then that's something that is very wrong and doesn't take into consideration what the local traffic flows are. So one, I think that really needs to be addressed and qualified as to who this 15% is. And secondly, I also take objection with what you've attributed as peak times for Lidl customers across the country. Again, if we look at Waitrose down the road, there are a number of schools that are in this locality. 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30 on a weekday are some of the busiest times for this Waitrose store at the end of the road. People going to pick up their milk, their bread. That's just the way that residents around here are accustomed to doing their shopping. Now, if Lidl is going to be in such a central site of a transport hub, again, which supports many schools, a lot of traffic in that way, then I really, really, again, as many people have mentioned before, really take objection to the times in which these peak flow studies have taken place with the road traffic, because it really does not take into consideration the demographic around here and how we use our shopping facilities.
Oh, and you've already covered some of that with the comment about the fact that the council is, in a sense, party to setting the times that you actually do these monitorings. But have you got anything to pick up on the 50% of walking? Do we have any or going?
Yeah, the 15% is basically, like I said earlier, is based on a database of similar sites, Lidl stores, Aldi stores. So basically, that's how we assess it. The 15% is the average of that, and that's how what we provide as an estimate of pedestrian walk trips to the store. It could be different, when it opens, but as part of the transport assessment and future assessment of the site and the accessibility site, we would commission a independent road safety audit, which assesses the accessibility and of the site for cars and non-cars, and that usually raises any issues, problems that we that might require further assessment. So the council,
if I can just rebut to that. So I appreciate that you're saying that you're doing this based on modelling compared to other similar stores, but it doesn't take into consideration this site. As one of the previous, sorry, I don't know if it was one of the councillors, but someone mentioned even 2 to 3% change in car traffic around this roundabout literally causes a complete standstill. Now, if you're saying we'll see what happens when it comes to it, if that 15% is up, down a few percentage, that literally causes, that's just a complete standstill around this area. So I appreciate that it's modelling, but I think it's very important for the residents here to know what figures are actually accurate for our site.
Yeah,
It's not just the car users, it's the pedestrians. We've got so many children using these roads, and it just sounds that none of this is really being taken into consideration.
Yeah, well, like I said, we have to assess the worst case scenario. So, in terms of trip generations, I can't remember exactly the trip proportions for this particular store. Just let me quickly try and go through the transport assessment that's been done. On this particular site, yeah, so we've assumed that there'd be 20% of new trips. This is vehicular trips, 40% pass by, 40% diverted. That's like a really robust case because, like I said before, peak period traffic, peak periods, that you wouldn't have that many new trips on the night work primary trips. That means they're coming from home to work. I mean, there's loads of technology at the moment in terms of like Google mapping, and you can actually, which tells you, how congested a road is. So if you actually go into Lidl, you have a choice of, you would make that choice of either going or not based on how congested the roads are. But like I said, I've done about 120 stores transport assessments for this, and during these peak periods, it's the new trips, the added new trips on this highway network will be minimal, if not negligible.
Hold on, 20% is not negligible.
No. In terms of that, the 20% is what we assess within the TA in the transport assessment. So we haven't got the responses back yet from the council, but that's how we assess it. We assess the worst case.
Okay, so Gareth?
Hi, good evening, guys. Thanks for putting on the meeting. I think having heard a lot of people's points already this evening, it's probably made this even more of a anxious discussion because I think there's a lot more concerns I had before tonight with the idea of trying to shoehorn, and it really does feel like we're trying to shoehorn a supermarket into a really, really congested space. We're going to absolutely gridlock main arteries across the borough for never mind just the public, just emergency services. But my actual question relates to crime. We've already got that the police are at breaking point. Every single day they're getting called to supermarkets because people are coming in and clearing the shelves. I'm pretty sure we've had it on good account from the local police that they won't respond unless the theft is over £200. Obviously, if you're a criminal, you know these things. So what is Lidl's duty of care to the local residents, myself included, whereby, what are we going to do to prevent that from happening? What are we going to do to prevent people coming into the store, clearing the shelves, causing petty crime in car parks? And then I live very locally to this. These undesirable characters will then be walking along, trying their luck on your car, your front door, on your driveway. What's been put in place to prevent this? Because we know that the police can't get involved because they're at breaking point. So what's Lidl's duty of care to me and all the other local residents in the area?
Okay. Grant, have you got a view about or?
Yeah. So it came out of, thanks for your question, Gareth, and I'm glad you share our concern in regards to shoplifting, because it's something that hits both us as a business and also the wider retail industry.
Not just shoplifting, more to what else was going to be the knock-on effect.
Yeah. So in terms of what happens outside of our car park, there's only obviously so much we can do about people trying to break into cars in the local area. I understand from the previous public consultation we had that there's already a bit of undesirable activity within the car park around the rear by the hotel. By putting the site into operation fully, because obviously the pub's currently vacant, that can attract people as it is, with that being vacant and being vulnerable. But with us on site, we would hope that actually, because of the activity on site, we also have our security guard on site. We've got camera systems and e-gates as a way to stop shoplifting. That the increased activity actually would potentially deter activity. So we have got the car park, and it's something we can discuss with the council if there's unsavoury activity on the car parks out of store hours. Then could we install a bollard, could we install a gate or something to secure that car park and stop people actually being able to go on site? That's something we're open to discussion with the council and the local police.
Another bit to add to this is, in planning terms, you're supposed to what they call design outcry in proposals. So it's very much the council will be looking at the scheme to seek that it's been designed in a way, and obviously they will liaise with the police architectural liaison officer to ensure that the scheme that has been designed is to ensure that it mitigates against any criminal activities. So it's another planning process that they have to go through with liaison consultation with the planning liaison officers. So it's all about passive surveillance, etc., designing out these aspects, CCTV, all these aspects will be considered as part of the proposal.
Which is great, but they don't work, because every time you go into a supermarket and there's some sort of disturbance, the security guard don't do anything. And I don't blame them most of the time, but there's no deterrent. And if you only need to look on social media and you just see people going in, filling up baskets, walking out, and that's just one issue. That's before they can't get what they need there and they do stuff to the local area.
Gareth, can I just add very quickly that I just wanted to share some positive news, and I share your exact concerns around shoplifting. But recently, I was on the Hillingdon Safer Neighbour Board, and apologies to go slightly off piece, but I think it's good news a little bit. Hillingdon's police had and I know it doesn't sound very high, but in terms of shoplifting reported to arrest rate, had an almost 25%. Now that seems very low, but actually if people think about how often shoplifting unfortunately goes on and what it does, they have one of the highest, not only in the Met, but in the country, of people who, when shoplifting is reported, to an arrest being made. So actually Hillingdon's police are leading the Met in dealing with this, but I think the concerns are rightly raised. But just as a slight bit of positive note, that Hillingdon is leading the way from the police's perspective in catching these quite awful shoplifters, and some of them very scary and violent.
Okay. Mira, you're next.
Hi, thank you for taking my questions again. So first of all, it's just a very quick one. If I could ask the chaps, your Lidl's planners, etc., who have shared slides, if they cannot possibly pass those over to the Residents Association, that'd be helpful to have those. But I've got a couple of questions. I'm going to try and make them as quick as possible. So the first is, you mentioned that the site already generated noise and light pollution, and you estimated that there wouldn't be any more noise and light pollution than there was originally at the orchard. But how could you have carried out the measurement of noise and light pollution at the orchard? Because I'm assuming this wasn't carried out at its height. I've lived here on Sharps Lane since 2008, and I can say that I haven't really suffered any noise or pollution of any sort, probably because a large part of it has been screened off by the hedges. So I just wanted to know how you were able to make those measurements. Secondly, is going back to the heritage point. Now, Lidl have close stores in 2023 and 2024. Some of them, acceptedly, of course, is in relation to the property being unfit for purpose, whatever that may mean. But other things is it's been due to replacement stores being opened up elsewhere. So what's to stop Lidl from closing this store? And at that point, we would have lost this heritage site. So what assurances do we have that that wouldn't happen here? You knock down this building that has a strong connection with the area, replace it with your store, and then we're left with, as residents, with a situation where anybody and anything could happen to the property, and we've lost, you know, quite a close connection to history. Because once that building is gone, it's gone.
Yeah. Should I say from a Lidl aspect, Martin, and then you can jump in on the planning?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So we're investing millions into. Well, we would be investing millions into this site should planning be approved. So, you know, it's not a decision that we take lightly. In regards to would we knock down this store to find another? That's the point of the sequential test that Richard and Martin had discussed. We think this is the best site for a Lidl, so we're very much committed to staying here rather than opening, knocking down the building, spending millions of pounds just to close up shop in 5-10 years time, or even further.
But from what I'd read, that was what had happened. And you just mentioned, and I'm assuming that when you mentioned Brewer, was that the old Master Brewer Hotel site that you were talking about?
So that's the site just adjacent to the train station car park.
Yeah, so I think that
it's the other side of the road.
Yeah.
It's behind Hillingdon fencing.
Yes, it's not.
And the Swallow.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So
Hillingdon Circus rather than Master Brewer would be a more accurate term.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, fine. But you know, it could very well be the case that you may find that at the end of the day, Lidl doesn't work in this area. And it's like I said, we've then lost a important heritage site.
I would
and it goes, sorry, I was just going to say, and it goes back to the fact of with the Spitfire is associated with that hotel. There is absolutely no denying that. And I don't blame the Polish airmen in some ways if they didn't want the Spitfire to come back on site, because there's no association between Lidl and the Spitfire. You have a situation where, you know, the Polish airmen didn't come and frequent Lidl. They came and frequented the Orchard. So, you know, and the concern that there could be damage to it. There's 101 things that go through my mind with regard to the heritage and the change in the character.
The one thing I'd say is the pub's been shut since December 2023, and the site's been marketed since April last year. It's been vacant since then. So, you know, the Polish Air, squadron also went in there and visited it. So it was in use. It's not been in use for over a year and a bit.
But do you realise that part of this is on the Hillingdon Heritage walks, where you could literally link onto, there is a link on the Hillingdon website, and it takes you as a walk, and it tells you about the history and the association between the Hillingdon, the Orchard and the Spitfire. That will all be gone.
Sorry, just a correction. The Orchard is still open. It's just the restaurant part that's closed. The hotel bit is the main building, the first story of it. So there are people in that building, all of it, not just the back bit. It's deceptive. You look at the plan, you look at it, and you might think the hotel's the bit at the back, but the hotel is the first floor of the front as well. So all of that is still in use. It's only the ground floor at the front, which was the restaurant and the bar, that is closed. So the building itself is still in use.
Well, as we said, this will all get picked up with the conversations with the council about the appropriate use of that site. So it's something that we will cover at that stage. Have we any more questions?
Yes, Christina.
Time.
Christina.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thanks. It's just kind of touching on another sort of on what's already been said, but just in terms of the actually safe access to and from the site for cyclists as well as for pedestrians, because basically there is no safe we, as Shivani has said, you know, that roundabout and the crossings, I cross it frequently, and you take your life in your hands. And I can't imagine either maybe pushing a buggy with children or being elderly, slightly slower. You know, you're kind of trying to look in opposite directions at the same time, and it's helpful if there's more than one of you to be able to do it safely, actually. And it's difficult to imagine without any, because you can't get from that site to any of the off that kind of island, as it were, to cross in any of three directions safely. There's no way to do that at present. And so increasing the numbers of cyclists or pedestrians who need to do that will inherently lead to something awful at some point. And, you know, so it feels like it does need some mitigations. But as Graham was saying, it's you know, it's very difficult to imagine that any mitigations to support that would not have an even more of an impact on transport. You know, so if you had crossings or whatever in an already, you know, completely packed area with the roundabout, with the islands, you know, the islands were mentioned, the crossing islands. They're very small. They're not particularly safe either. So yeah, that's really my point. Thanks.
We've in a sense we've covered some of this, but anything that has been submitted as part of the planning application, the council will undertake its own consultation with its statutory bodies. One of those will be its highways team, so ensure that the safety of people visiting the site will be maintained. If the council has one, which it probably has, I'm sure that highways team will also consult with their own cycling team internally, because obviously that's something they would do, and that will get fed back into the process. And if there's concerns raised at that stage, then we've got to address them. That's the way that works.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that's all the questions. Sorry, we've overrun by a bit, but thank you all very much for coming. Thank you, Lidl, for coming, and
Can I just say thank you from our side to say thank you very much for all these questions. They're very, very useful to us. If you do have any other questions, we obviously want to try and answer as many. If people have got things they want to write into the Resident Association about, we'll happily handle them. And you know, if that's the best route to take us through, then we're more than happy to do that. But thanks for this evening. It's been really helpful.
Well, I'd also like to especially thank Daniel O'Neill and Sue Brown, who organised this event and put a lot of work into actually getting it live. These things don't just happen magically. So thank you, Daniel and Sue, for your work. And I wish everyone a very good evening.
Thank you.
So,
good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good evening.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.